This is Live Unmasked for Sunday, 10th of November 2024. This is where we share the posts from our Facebook page and have discussion on the topics that the post provides. The first post is from Reach Every Voice, a practice of educators working with non-speaking and minimally speaking autistic students. We teach these students to express themselves with alternative communication. We also collaborate with families and schools. And what they've shared is something called Next Tips, which is advice from a non-speaking autistic guy. And it says, 4 suggestions for honouring autonomy. Number 1, let me choose. This could be dinner or whatever. I am doing nothing at my downtime. Number 2, hear me when I say no. If you really need me to do something I don't want to, explain why it must be done right now. Number 3, try to drop judgment about the clips I stim with. I know other people think only kids should watch cartoons, but I use them to take a mental break. Number 4, focus on agency instead of independence. Yes, I still need support. Yes, I deserve to direct that assistance.
I didn't want to jump in too quickly there. This is from the person who knows. So the more we can take this on board, the better, I say.
The thing that I'm always keen to do from past conversations is talk about and demonstrate as alternative communication. Because non-speaking people have this unfair stereotype against them. Because they don't speak, it seems that they have nothing to say, or they can't communicate, they can't give their views, give their thoughts, etc. And it's a thing that people, and including us, are trying to change. And there's a lot of different posts trying to push that narrative forward, because everyone deserves a voice. And that doesn't mean they need to speak to have one, which this slide is proving.
Yeah, it's new forms of communication, isn't it? Or shared communication. Point 4 kind of struck home with me. It's kind of, even in a general sense, it's useful. But yeah, new ways of shared communication.
It's about respect. It's like if someone doesn't communicate in the way that is supposed to be the so-called normal, they get judged, and because they're not speaking doesn't mean that they've got nothing to say. It doesn't mean they're not listening for a start. It doesn't mean that they'll shut off or anything. Always assume competence.
It seems to me this crosses over into so many other parts. Assume competence for kids as well. Believe them when they tell you what they need. It goes into relationships with other people. If you have a sibling, assume that there's some competence in the way that they describe themselves or how they wish to explain themselves. We are very quick to take away the validity of what other people do to communicate, whether this is somebody who's using alternative communication in this sense, or just in society generally. It's almost as though it's canary in the coal mine again. It's taking this person who has it at an extreme end of things to write it out and put it out for us to then say we'd actually not just apply it to that person, apply it to the whole of society, and it's all better for everybody.
Next post is from ASD Reading. It's a product service and is described as the leading reading program for students on the autism spectrum. What they've shared is about things positive about autistic. What it's called is you can be autistic and still. You can still enjoy interaction with others. You can still look attractive. You can still communicate well. You can still use sarcastic humour. You can still enjoy public speaking and being seen. You can still hold empathy for others. You can still be a mother and wife. You can still struggle in school academics. You can still give eye contact in conversations. You can still have a romantic partner. You can still enjoy intimacy and physical touch. You can still own a home, and you still have a career. So you can be autistic and do all these things. And while sometimes this sort of message is obvious to others, to many people this needs to be said because there's many who are autistic that are made to believe, or maybe they just generally feel within themselves that maybe their life is going to be very limited and they're not going to succeed much. It's just simple messages of encouragement and inspiration.
I'm just going to ask, are these relatively normative aspirations?
It's just to counter all those negative stuff that's put out there saying you cannot do. So I think it's just this saying that you can do if you want to. Whether people aspire to these sort of things is a different story. It just depends on the individual. It would be fair to generalise too much, but these sort of messages, I think, can be helpful for many people out there.
I just feel that there's social pressures to be certain things, and that's half the battle. There can be an additional pressure to be told that, yeah, it's okay to be these things. You go, well, why am I not these things?
Yeah, it can always go the other way. People are different. People do feel pressured. There's assumed things that you must do in life to be looked upon as a successful life. For instance, if you don't have children, you don't have a family, people look upon you as either selfish. There's a judgment on you. Particularly women. If you haven't had this successful career, even if you have worked, if you've not had this sort of career thing that they always seem to go on about in the media and when general conversation is meant to be something encouraging you. I mean, even now, when there's hardly any jobs out, it's like you must have a career. You must have this perfect family, which absolutely does not exist. This sort of thing can go so many ways.
Yeah, it's positive, Harry. I mean, we shouldn't follow stereotypes or, act out the persona that you're supposed to be. But also, it's a wee bit, I mean, it might be negative of me, but it's kind of like a wee bit of a symptom list here.
Right at the beginning, you said, is this not a normative list? And by golly, yes, it is. And the reason it's a normative list is because it's a pushback against freakery. To say that these things that you value in your normative way, we are also doing ourselves, or it's part of us, or we are human in that as well. So don't have a very closed stereotypical idea of what we're capable of. So yeah, you're right. It's a normative list, but there's a need for pushback against some rather daft ideas.
The next post is from Autistic Revolution. They're a community organisation, community interest company, Autistic Revolution magazine, where employment, creating neurodivergent affirming spaces, creativity, education, well-being. What do we have here is only a paper copy of our summer issue. Doesn't it look wonderful? As soon as our bank account is activated, we will be taking orders. Thank you to Neurodiverse Journeys and Family, aka Alice McSweeney. Their amazing donation will go towards the printing and posting costs needed to send out to our wider community members contributing to this issue. And there's a list of people that have been involved in this issue. Elizabeth Van Poot. Autistic Links, Empowerment, Collaboration and Community. The Neurospicy Baker. Joe Fuller. Stevie Cooper. Michelle Benetton. Bobby Ellman, Autistic Experience Consultancy and Training. Life Through My Lens. Ashley Autistic. Laura Helfeld, Neurodivergent Nurse Consulting. Autistic and Living the Dream. Dr. Tiff Lanza. Dr. Autumn Day Miller. Autistic with Scott. Neurodivergent Neuropsychologist. And Neurodiverse Journeys. The donation of £100 will also enable us to print copies of the upcoming autumn issue. Every penny counts and will help us to get started and most importantly, keep us going.
I'll need to read this. I've heard of it before, and I like anywhere that kind of connects the dots and networks rather than isolated individuals.
That is the word. Networks. Networking. Community. People getting together. People sharing. People being inspired. People giving inspiration. That's what a lot of people out there need. Because being autistic, in many ways, for many people, coming from my personal experience, can feel quite lonely sometimes. You can feel alone, you could feel excluded, and because you feel different to what is supposedly this perceived normality of the society you live in, you just feel sort of withdrawn from everything else. So you network with other people who are autistic, although they're different from yourself, there's similarities that you share in terms of stories, experiences you have, and it just helps so greatly for a lot of people. It makes people feel that they don't feel alone. There's a bit of connection out there, and it's positive stuff. You're going to talk about stuff that's quite intense, quite emotional. You could talk about yourself in a very positive way, of maybe the skills you have that you don't realise you've had. You know, the sensitivity thing we've talked about before, and how that can be heightened, and how you can enjoy things more, like tasting and listening and seeing, all sorts of things. Things like the Autistic Revolution brings a lot of stuff of that together in one package. I haven't read it myself, but I have seen a lot of highlights from it, and it looks very inspiring.
Yeah, I feel as though I come across bits and bobs of it without actually having to go and look at the whole issue anyway. But yeah, we should look through it. It's great that what they've managed to do is harness all kinds of networking themselves, from having had careers and social networks and professional networks, to make this project, this online magazine, really sing. It's been tried before by the main charities. It may still even be going. There's something called Autitude in Scotland. It was almost left for one person to do with some contributions from the public. This thing they've got going is much more structured, much more secure. So I think we can see this as something that's going to be around for a long time, I hope. Now, there's the other thing, is that I know that there's going to be politics, and there's some very strong opinions that I see expressed by some of the main people in the organization. But the magazine itself does cover a very wide spectrum of views, and they know what we're doing in this very strange, quite close collaboration with the so-called totem enemy ABA people, and they're not kicking back against that in any form. So I see this as a very grown-up way of moving forward so far.
The next post is from Brightfire Community Interest Company, non-profit organisation, mental health services for autistic and ADHDers, self-diagnosed or self-identified clients welcome. And what they've shared is a picture from Bridget from Brightfire. Proud to be ND. Proud to be me. Throwback to when I started owning my neurodivergent identity. I think this was my first post-diagnosis coming out pic on Facebook. Have you got any proud to be ND pics of you owning your neurodivergent identity?
I like, Harry, how you emphasise the word owning, because sometimes maybe this identity is imposed on people and they struggle with it. So maybe that's part of this. But coming out, I don't think I've come out yet. Maybe I was always out.
It's taking a photograph. It's like a milestone, a moment in time of a realisation or even just a thought, and sharing it because you feel it's worthwhile sharing, obviously for your own benefit because you're doing it and you feel good within yourself to do it, but of course sharing it to help others, and also asking the question, have you done the same thing? Is there a moment in time you've done that? So it opens up, and that's that same thing about communicating, reaching out and networking. The next post is from Asking Autistics, who are an autistic podcast by autistic people. What they've shared is a cartoon. It's about using sarcasm and understanding sarcasm. Using sarcasm as confidently as anything and just spell out the sarcastic comments and things like that. But actually understanding sarcasm when it's coming from someone else is a whole different thing for many autistic people. Because we take things stereotypically too literally, but we do it ourselves. So it's actually quite a good point, a humorous post on that particular topic.
Could sarcasm be humour? Because that was kind of one of the first myths I felt was buried for me. Was, we don't understand jokes or humour. But then again, I use humour a lot, and often I realise it can be a bit of a defence mechanism. Yeah, and comedians have studied that. But sarcasm can be a bit vicious, yeah. And it just goes to show that what a thing I've been thinking about a lot recently with the US election and stuff and the divisions in society is projection. How one side will project onto the other exactly what they are. It's very fluid. We feed off each other. And so when we're being sarcastic, I think we're maybe doing a wee bit of that projection thing onto people when we are sensitive and don't like it coming back.
I think sarcasm is one of the basic jokes that human beings have. And it is funny because what you're saying doesn't necessarily match the way you're saying it. So it's a good thing for people to learn that there can be unexpected juxtapositions of communications that need to be looked for. It's like a training wheel for seeing ambiguity,
Yeah, just type mockery and surrealism and pastiche even, I have a friend who says that way back, women probably were the most dominant group because they had the weapon of mockery, which was a strange thing to say, but he explained it to me.
And for the people that say that sarcasm is the lowest form of wit, remember Shakespeare and how much sarcasm he used.
Yeah, in the tradition of satires in the Scottish clans from the bards, it could destroy a person through reputation.
The next post is from Thriving Autistic, which is a non-profit organisation by and for the autistic and otherwise neurodivergent community. And what the share is about sound. the Autistic Adult Discovery Programme, finding out about our sensory system. What helps you manage sensory overwhelm from different sounds? It also says, how does sound affect you as an autistic adult? What helps you manage sensory overwhelm from different sounds? Our community often finds managing sounds really difficult. Headphones and earbuds can help. Do you have any recommendations? Is there anything else that works for you?
I've found recently that if you isolate over a period of time, you become desensitized. So you avoid stimulation that you dislike, and then when you experience it again, it's almost overwhelming and too much. Because I began to notice that experiences are a wee bit overwhelming now. And I don't think that's because I've got a diagnosis, and I don't think it's age, but it may be a part of that. I think it's one of these reactions to perhaps isolation and withdrawal. So there's a lot to talk about with noise and it as an experience. So I'll open it up here.
It seems to me that you're speaking very much to the experience of somebody who has relatively recently started to get a handle on their neurodivergence and autism. I found, and I think other people have reported, that just a general inquiry, thinking about your difference and how things are, it means you will be changing things in your environment already. So everything has a knock-on effect from this. And that's why it's always about taking it slow. And that's why I think it's underestimated the jolt it is to a middle-aged person to experience this. We hear everybody of all the genders say this. And it's the long-term support of people that's much more important than giving them this short course or this information. And it seems to me that this is part of it, this post. It's a different way of doing things. It's a longevity way of doing things. So I'm very positive about it.
The last post is from Little Puddin's IE. Autistic meltdowns are a natural and involuntary response to situations that overwhelm an individual's ability to cope. The causes of an autistic meltdown are unique to each autistic individual. However, general causes can be grouped into several categories, each reflecting the unique ways in which autistic individuals experience and process the world. Sensory overwhelm. Autistic individuals often have heightened sensory sensitivities when the sensory environment becomes too intense, such as loud noises, bright lights, strong smells, of overwhelming textures. It can lead to sensory overload. The brain struggles to process excessive sensory input, leading to a meltdown as a way to release the built-up overwhelm. Emotional overwhelm is intense emotions, whether from joy, frustration, sadness, or anxiety, and this might happen during emotionally charged situations such as arguments, disappointments, or even unexpected changes. The inability to express, process these strong emotions effectively can trigger a meltdown. Communication overwhelm. The difficulty in having communicating needs, thoughts, or feelings met, especially when misunderstood and unable to articulate effectively through communication their needs, can be deeply frustrating. This frustration can build up, leading to a meltdown whenever an individual feels stuck or unheard. And it goes into a lot of other descriptions as well. And just to go through what the autistic meltdown triggers may look like, and it's got pictures and things, it's quite a descriptive and quite, colourful presentation. Masking too long, feeling trapped, crowded places, unexpected changes, itchy, tight clothing, hunger, thirst, stress, social interactions, sensory overload, suppressing stims, too loud, cognitive emotion overload, difficulty in regulating body temperature, not being able to sleep, new environments, difficulty identifying emotions, and too many instructions at once.
This is really good. I used to struggle with the kind of playful imagery sometimes in presentations, but this has depth to it and pretty much identifiable.
Yeah, just to add my voice, it's a good find, this.
What I like about it, it's while reading it, you can identify with a lot of what it's saying and the examples it's giving. And that sometimes for me can be enough just to see it read, or, you know, to read it, to see the information down elsewhere. So you don't just think it's just you. And to know that this sort of information is going out to other people to tell them it's not just them this happens to. And obviously the information provided can be something that may help to either understand why these things happen and to understand people within themselves.
And as she says, it's unique to her, and each autistic individual is unique. So again, being wary of the generalization, but very much informative.
Thank you very much, everyone, for taking part in the conversation tonight. It was really good topics and things that were shared, and really good conversations that came from that. Thanks to the people sharing those posts for me to share to the Autistic Radio page. There's so much out there to discuss, and it's just very good to do so and to share it, you know, verbally and audibly, that we can share further on. This is Live Unmasked for the 10th of November 2024, which is part of Spectrum Voices Conversation, which is here every Sunday, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. UK time, which is 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, United States. So thank you very much for listening and taking part, and I'll hand you over to Jules.
That's very kind of you, Harry, and wow, the work that you do each week to compile those things and what comes of it when we discuss them. So, you know, thank you very much for that. This time we add on to the end of the conversation our open meeting for Autistic Radio and sometimes for Autistic Association, the fully autistic APO that is behind the funding for autisticradio.com. Most of what we have been doing has been for Acolicon, and we have now finished that project. I'll keep it short and sweet. We've got everything that we need for the Acolicon presentation typed out and ready for recording. So I'll be working on that, and we'll be organizing ourselves for Acolicon at the right time, just turning up. We're getting some good feedback from our ideas on keeping the thing going with a second series of the behaviorists, but we've also got other things that are happening as an interim where we're concentrating on different subjects, particularly the one that's coming up on Tuesday, which is the two doctors talking about their experience of alternative versions of schooling for kids. A mother's perspective, a researcher's perspective also, and a PhD, and then another researcher and a practical person who's working and creating a school in Japan. I think we'll be talking a lot more about the book that follows the experience of somebody who was autistic but had also a number of other complications to their health. Somebody who would be seen as having particularly large differences in their communication and way of organizing their information. So there's a lot going on.
Spectrum Voices Conversation is an Autistic Association production for autisticradio.com. If you have something to share with us, if you need a voice, you can make different kinds of programs with us. You can make a 10-minute short, or you can join us for a podcast to talk about a subject that is dear to your heart or something you think needs a wider audience. We have an open door policy for divergent views. We do not necessarily agree with everything that we share on our Facebook pages or the words expressed in our podcast. There are a lot of different divergent views which we are trying to allow get aired so that people can see things from different people's vantage points. We hope that you will join that conversation. Contact us through any of our links, Facebook, by email, directly to us.